Welcome everyone to episode number 4. This is our bonus episode. We're going to go through the brackets for both boys and girls. We're going to start from AAA, work our way down to D. We're going to spend some more time on the C and D brackets just because that's our goal here. We have a special guest here for today. We have Joshua. He is from NBC Watertown. So Josh, if you want to introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I graduated from South Jeff High School in 2023, and I was a 3-sport athlete in those ranks. My brother is a few years younger. He still plays down in South Jeff, so I've been in a lot of contact with schools around this area from that. Along with, I also work with NBC Watertown, where we travel all over the section and we just stream games on YouTube and just commentate through them for our viewers. But yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you because we don't get to travel up to the North Country very often. So
Yeah,
a nice northern perspective.
all right. Jay, do you have anything you wanted to start off with? Any introductory stuff? Anything at all?
I think people are consistently griping about the BTM, and the section is definitely going to be looking at it in the future because I constantly hear those grumblings. I don't know if there's ever going to be acceptance of it wholeheartedly, and I think it's not unwarranted. And we'll see how this plays out, although while I was doing my predictions, it was hard to go against the chalk numbers. And
I know. I was doing the same thing.
I do think that it speaks to, it does have a sense of the strength of schedule being right, but there are some glaring situations where I do think it's a little too volatile in the setting. Again, without those cross matches coming into play, you're getting some significant penalties. And I think from the bigger perspective, it hurts small schools because there's a bigger risk. Larger schools aren't going to play the smaller schools because there's a bigger risk to them, because your BTM ranking is impacted so much on what the other schools you play, what their BTM ranking is going to be. I think there should be a different metric used. I like the idea of strength of schedule, but I don't like the BTM. It's a weird system because you're not going to want to take that risk. And that's where I view that as a problem, mainly for the small schools, is that they will not want to take the risk in playing you. Mm-hmm. And if you had a different quantitative, like if it was based off of teams' win percentages, and then you did your strength of schedule ranking based off of that, kind of like the BCS used to do for bowl games for football.
Yeah.
Your ranking was your win essentially was every other team you played, their win percentage averaged out. And then you could add your win percentage into that so that it helps. So then you want to play good teams, regardless of class. It doesn't matter what their class is. You want to play a team that's going to win a lot of games. That's who you should schedule.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, another thing that kind of goes along with it is, I mean, you have some of these schools that they don't get that choice that easily because of their location of the school. I mean, you have one school that, you know, maybe they are an A school, but if they're surrounded by a bunch of B's, C's, and D's, then that's going to hurt their BTM because they're going to be forced to play those lower class schools because that's just all. I mean, bus drivers and the buses just aren't going to want to go all the way out for an hour-long drive just to face a school that's going to be an A school.
Right. The other thing, too, that I think needs to be incorporated into it is, like I said before, if you're going to have a win, that win's got to have some sort of value. So, like, for you guys up north, you guys usually play some out-of-section games against, like, Section 10 teams, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, I think, depending on the class size, and that's the state committee determining if they go to Section 4 or Section 10, but, you know, if someone were to play another Section 10 team, I feel like there needs to be value for it. If closer to us, like Utica area or Oneida area or Syracuse area, they play a Section 4 team. I feel like there should be some sort of value for it.
It would be kind of nice. I was actually talking to one of the reps today and said the same thing. Across the sections, there's no consistency. Like a Section 10 website doesn't even exist. Section 4 is hard to get any information on. It's I don't know. Maybe the state needs to push that more than there.
Right.
But anyway, BTM is BTM. Let's get into these brackets, huh?
All right. Let's start with the boys' side. We're going to very quickly go through the AAA, AA, A, B, and then get to the C and D here. For AAA, you don't really have many teams. There's only a total of 9. As of right now, you got RFA. They're the 1 seed. They are undefeated. We're going to quickly list off some things here, type of categories that we listed off here. For me, my Final Four, I'm going chalk here. Rome, CNS, Bishop Ludden, Liverpool is my Final Four. Winner, I'm going to go with CNS over Rome Free Academy. Matchup I'm looking for that could be pretty close game, I believe, as of right now, would be Liverpool hosting CBA. The potential matchup that I think is going to really, really fluctuate this bracket will be if CNS moves on and Bishop Ludden move on. That matchup between the 2 and 3 are going to be really, really good. They did not play each other this year, so that could be a really, really good matchup there. Really good basketball. Upsets for me, I don't really see one. There's not enough teams, really, in my opinion. And based on what I looked at for these 9 teams, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then everyone else.
Yeah, I have chalk all the way across, and I have RFA winning it. I don't see RFA dropping this one. CNS is a great team. Got to watch them last year. That Andrew Benedict kid is super talented, but I've got RFA. I've got no upsets, same as you.
Okay.
Anything stand out to you, Josh?
Not really. I think the only difference that I had Bishop Ludden sneaking by CNS. I had them taking on RFA in the final, but yeah, I mean, AAA, it's pretty straightforward. You hit it right there. I mean, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you kind of have everybody else.
Yep. All right,
I agree.
Let's go to more exciting things.
Okay, now we're looking at the play. I actually did look into this one, and there are some matchups where I was like, I honestly don't know, because there's so many teams here that have split matchups, and some of them it was weird. Like the team that won the first game won by double digits, but then lost by 8 or 9. So it's very, very close here. For me, Final Four, I got the defending champs West Jenny at number 1, Nottingham, ESM, and Henniger as my Final Four. The winner, I'm going to say that West Jenny's going to go back-to-back here, and they are going to win a very close, thrilling game against ESM.
I had a bit of a different look for my Final Four. I actually had Oswego beating ESM. I just, looking at Oswego, I think they're a team that's just going to get hot at the right time. So I had them in my Final Four, but from that point, kind of the same. I do have West Jenny repeating as champs.
I changed from you guys a bit. I have West Jenny and Fulton, then Nottingham and ESM, and then I have Fulton getting the upset over West Jenny to make it to the finals, and then Nottingham winning it all this year.
Okay.
Go Dogs.
All right.
Moving on to...
I do think the one thing of interest here is that actual first-round matchup is Watertown versus Fowler. Watertown is one of those teams that's sitting at 12-8, but ranked as an 8 seed. And that goes back to Josh's point, especially in the North Country with the big schools. Watertown is it. So they've got to play all these games. They're required to because of the league against a bunch of teams that aren't in this aren't in this class, so they are handicapped because of that. BTM. Let's go Class A.
All right, Class A. We have a full bracket here of 16 teams. We got, for myself, my Final Four is chalk across the board. I got West Hill, JD, Bishop, Grimes, and Syracuse ITC. The winner, I think this is very similar to the B and C brackets where there is a clear number one, and in this case it is West Hill, and they are my winner over Bishop Grimes. The matchup I'm looking forward to off the hop here in the first round is Cortland hosting Utica Academy of Science. Utica Academy of Science, I believe, has 12 wins this year. Yes, 12. And they're going to Cortland, who's 15-5. So, having played each other, this could be a really good matchup here, I believe. The upset that I could possibly see, if it happens, is New Hartford beating Jamesville DeWitt, if they move on. New Hartford plays a very tough schedule. JD does as well, but New Hartford is kind of in that weird area of, like, there's a lot of bigger schools in that area compared to their size. So I wouldn't sleep on New Hartford.
Yeah. I had a different look. I mean, I'm trying to hold down a bit of bias here. Again, I mentioned earlier, I graduated from South Jeff.
Feed into the bias. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm going to a little bit. I have them in the Final Four. I think of those first two games, I mean, the number one part of South Jeff's game is their center, Bobby Pittick. He's a tall, big body who just destroys the paint. Camden has Isaac Lynch, who I think is going to give him a ton of problems. But I think if South Jeff can squeak by Camden, I think they can get their way into the Final Four. And then from that point, I have it pretty cut and dry. I have it being Jamesville DeWitt versus Bishop Grimes. I also have West Hill winning. I have them beating a JD. But I'm kind of going along with what I said. If there's an upset to be had that I think would be the biggest, I am going to go with Camden versus South Jeff. The tough part for both of those teams is they feed their big men often. And it can cause an issue if let's say they cancel each other out, that's going to leave the other four men on the floor to be, the reason that they move on. So I think that is going to be, it's going to be an exciting game. I think it's going to be at South Jeff, where South Jeff usually plays better. So I'm going to say that's why I'm going to say that they could win. But again, and I mean, if there's another upset, it would be it can really just, I think A is a very balanced one outside of number one. I think they're very balanced, and then there's just West Hill that's kind of in their own world out there.
Yep. I have West Hill going all the way. This one, because I know so little about the bigger schools, I decided to take the bigger risks on calling some upsets because it was like, yeah, why not? Let's make some people angry around this place. So I too have South Jeff in the semifinals against West Hill, and then West Hill goes all the way. I did have JD, but I do agree, Sanders, that New Hartford definitely has the makeup to pull that upset off. I actually have Cortland pulling off the upset against Bishop Grimes to get to the semifinals, and then JD and West Hill in the finals with West Hill winning. So
wow,
that's where we went off the rails. I hope the Purple Tiger Country can back me up there. Otherwise those Cobras are going to give me a whole lot of crap.
Wow, that's a big one.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So this bracket's going to be pretty fun. I think once you get to the semifinals, it's going to get really, really interesting.
Nice. All right, Class B, boy, this one I agree that this one has a clear favorite to me. I also went out on a limb on this one, got a little crazy. So I have Marcellus going all the way. I have Marcellus and Lowville in the semis. And then this is where things took a turn because I have Skinny Atlas and Mount Markham in the semifinals. And actually, I have Mount Markham making it to the finals and losing to Marcellus. So my big upset is the Phoenix-Mount Markham matchup. Things are rolling right now. And I'm putting all my money in Mustang country.
They did finish the year winning 7 in a row, so they're hot right now.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's a little different. I got Marcellus, Phoenix, Holland Patton, and I got Kaz in the final 4. I think Marcellus is going to beat Phoenix in the finals. One matchup I'm looking at right now in the first round is Little Falls and Herkimer. That's your classic 8 versus 9, flip a coin, pick 'em type thing. In my opinion, Little Falls won both matchups, but they were close games. The potential matchup that I'm looking at is the one that JU highlighted, which is Phoenix versus Mount Markham. I really wanted to make this my upset game, but I didn't. I picked Kaz upsetting Skinny Atlas as my potential upset if both teams meet in the quarterfinals.
Well, I also hopped on the Mount Markham upset train.
Nice.
I have my semifinal being Marcellus, Holland Patton, and Skinny Atlas, and then Mount Markham. I have Marcellus beating Skinny Atlas in the final. I do like how hot Mount Markham is, but I think Skinny Atlas has the type of offense to get themselves to the final. And then, yeah, I think Marcellus just kind of has the all-around team to still beat Skinny Atlas in the final. But I think Skinny Atlas kind of has that offensive power to make the finals a good game.
All right, Mustang Country, you heard us. You gotta back up the CNY Sports Authority. We got three heads saying you got a chance here. You gotta pull it off. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. Let's head to Class C. Here's another one where I think there is a clear-cut winner, but my God, is it a packed field. Tons of play-in games that are going to be happening tomorrow and Saturday. And then the first round happens. Quick turnaround after all those play-in games, with the first round happening kind of Monday, and then we're rolling on from there. This one, to me, goes a little chalky, despite the fact that there is such a big field, except I've got Cooperstown and Hamilton in the semifinals, and then I have Waterville facing Cato Meridian in the semifinals. I think Cato can give Tully the game. That's the upset I'm looking at. Another upset that I'm looking at is OnTech. They're an interesting school, being the charter school that they are. They have a lot of talent. It's whether they can get all that talent together and playing in the right direction. I actually have them upsetting Frankfurt Schuyler. And they gave Hamilton one heck of a game last year in the first round of sectionals. So I wanted to see that rematch. So I have OnTech with an upset over Frankfurt, and then Cato with an upset over Tully, if they can get there. With Cooperstown and Waterville moving on to the finals, I see Cooperstown, unless Cooperstown takes a big misstep, I think they've got this wrapped up, and I think they could make a run to state.
Yeah,
go ahead,
Josh.
I also have Cooperstown going all the way. I also kind of took the amount of teams in this. I mean, it makes it somewhat March Madness-y, like that kind of like, there's so many teams that you just don't really know where it's gonna all flip on its head. And I think that OnTech, I think that they will kind of ride some momentum that they get from some of these games. like you said, they have a complete team. If they can put it together, they can make a decent run. I think that they will upset Frankfurt Schuyler, and them and Hamilton, like you said, they had a really good game last year.
Are you going to put the slipper on their foot? Are you going to on a Cinderella?
I'm going to give it to them. I'm going to give them a Cinderella all the way to the semifinals. I'm trusting in On Tech. They really, it's got to be, you got to ride the hot hand when you have it. I think once they get past that Frankfurt Schuyler and they see Hamilton, they kind of have that, that almost dream type motivation to get through. I think they might be able to squeak one through. It's a massive upset, so it wouldn't be, and it's the Cinderella story, but I think she'll make it to the semifinals before Cooperstown shuts it down. But on the other side, I have it not as exhilarating. I have Waterville making it in. I think their matchup against I think they're going to go up against Tully. I think Cato Meridian is going to give them a fight, but I just think that Tully is going to be able to pull that one out. So I have Waterville. I have them beating Tully and going into the final to face Cooperstown, and I do have Cooperstown coming out with it. But I'm really putting all the marbles on Tech there.
That would be quite the run if On Tech is able to pull this together. For me, my final four, I got Cooperstown. I was very hesitant of putting Tully in there, but I put Tully in there. I have Oriskany upsetting Waterville, and then I got Frankfurt Schuyler beating Hamilton to get to the semifinals. Winner, I have Cooperstown over Tully. But every time I look at this bracket, I keep going back to Cato. They have 3 kids of 6'3" and higher for height. They have a sophomore, what was his name? Brody Smith. He is a sophomore at 6'3", and then you got Embry George is a freshman at 6'5", and then Perry Plank at 6'4". So these 3, just the overall size and the fact that these 3 kids are like the playmakers of this team, really. And I know that inexperience could be a factor here, but it's just really, really hard to look over their height as being a potential factor in this matchup. They're one of those teams where it's like, do you really want to play them? Not really.
Yeah.
For matchup, right off the hop here, I'm looking at Faith Heritage and Beaver River. Faith Heritage plays a pretty competitive schedule, but I feel like Beaver River at the end of the day isn't really being talked about enough. They're 15-4, so that's a really, really impressive record to look past. This could be a really good matchup, a close one coming down in the fourth quarter. You got Faith Heritage made it to the finals for Class D last year, having a pretty good year moving up a class. A potential matchup, like I said, that I'm looking forward to, that I really, really hope happens, is Cato versus Tully. I think that could really, really set some new hype and excitement for this whole bracket. The upset is the one I said earlier, which is Oriskany over Waterville. I just feel like Oriskany, I don't know, I feel like they're just more competitive. They're more of a complete team. I think Waterville is very, very good in themselves. They're defending champs. I just feel like Oriskany is playing really good basketball. They're a really confident group, and I feel like they're just going to be able to take care of business and beat Waterville to get to the semifinal.
I think there's some awesome matchups in Class A. I think that Faith Heritage Beaver River matchup is awesome. Faith Heritage didn't really graduate anyone from that finals appearance last year. They still have Weston Retsos and Landon Brago. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name. So that combo is tough. Beaver River has Cade Schneider. They're sort of, and I think that's going to be the interesting deal when you get into Class C and D, is you have these sort of one-man show teams, and then a two-person game, and then like Cooperstown is pretty much across the board. Like that's where you kind of separate yourselves. So like Cade Schneider up in Beaver River is a little bit more of that one-man show. Can he get the job done? Absolutely, he could be hot. But I do think it's a little harder for that one-man show to take over. When you take a look at Cooperstown, they have Miles Nellen, who is definitely like the guy there, putting up 21.1 points per game. But they have a whole lot of other contributing factors. Christian Lawson is putting up 11.7 points a game. Jackson Crispin, that stretch center, is putting up 9.6. So they're far more balanced in that attack. When you take a look at Hamilton, who might be there, they're a little bit more balanced with Drew Baker leading the way. 21 points per game, 220 rebounds on the season, 55 blocks this year. He's a force inside, but they have a little bit more balance with the outside. Freshman Luke Langle is putting up 12 points a game, dangerous from three. He's got 59 steals on the season, and then you add in the fact that Bryce Wright is getting back to healthy here. He has 11.2 points per game, and he's got 40 steals on the season. So they have, like three people to contribute. When you take a look at that potential Frankfurt-Hamilton matchup, Frankfurt is really a two-person show. You've got Lionel Colthurst, who's averaging 16.9 a game, and you've got Jerome Bowen with 15.3, and then Philip Tangora has 14.3. Like, they move the ball well. They have a balanced attack, but I think Frankfurt has a tough matchup with Hamilton, where if that's the matchup that we get, I think Hamilton has gotten them in the past, and that helps in this situation. When you take a look at, Oriskany, you were talking Oriskany and Watertown. Oriskany is one of those two-horse teams where it's Nick Hayes and Eddie Wright. Nick is averaging 21 a game. Eddie's got 16.4. They have to work together to make that happen. When you look at Waterville, they're more of the one-person show. Jackson Ruane is leading that team with 23.6 a game, 144 assists, and 110 steals on the season. Like, he's doing it all. Can he be hot enough to get it done against them? I think you bring up a good question on that, because it really does go through him. Their second scorer is Alan Morey, who's got 10.8 a game with 207 rebounds on the season, 22 blocks. So he definitely will contribute, but can those other factors contribute enough, and can you shut down those other two? And that's where the matchup is interesting, because I think where we all agreed, like, the Tully-Cato matchup is really an interesting one if we get it. Right. And part of that is because Tully is undersized. They run a bunch of different defensive sets. They came out in a 1-3-1. They'll go man-to-man. They'll drop into a different zone at times. But they really have two players. Garrett Thompson's averaging 20.6 a game, and Connor Bastido is averaging 17. Bastido can shoot from the outside, but he kind of tends to play more of that center big guy role. Where if you take on Cato, is he going to be able to put up those numbers in that role? But he can also shoot from outside. So does that have to stretch? Is Embry George going to be able to guard him out at three, or are they going to sit back in his zone? And Perry Plank is an absolute animal. He can take over a game. He's averaging 15.6 a game. I mean, Embry George is definitely changing things, but they're a little bit more balanced after that. Dylan McGettrick's averaging 11.4, and then Brody Smith and Embry George are both in 8 points a game. So it's like a little bit more balanced, but you've got to rely on that matchup, where I think that gets really interesting is how are you going to line up with that team across from you?
Yeah, Tully squeaked out a win at Cato back all the way in December 11th, 68-67. And then The other one that I was just looking at, which just re-looking at the standings and everything, if Cato wants to even have a chance at Tully, they got to get through potentially Weedsport.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go through their schedule, I mean, again, these are both pretty good teams, and Weedsport and Cato, let's see, I believe they split.
They did by 4 points each time.
Yeah, so I mean, again, who knows? I mean, this matchup here could be
it could be
super
Tully.
competitive.
That's true. Could be Weedsport Tully for sure. You kind of forget about the play-in games because they have so much. You focus on the bigger names on the bracket, but absolutely Weedsport, 100% in that mix. I think even you can look at West Canada Valley as being one of those teams that's a fringe competitor too. It's just, I think Oriskany might have them this year.
Yeah.
Although interestingly enough, they didn't. Did they play each other? Oh yes, they did. I was gonna say.
Who's that?
Oriskany beat West Canada by 4 this year.
Yeah, that could be another good matchup. The CSC has just got a lot of
16 in an earlier games. Playing those teams 3 or 4 times in a season, like, yeah. I mean, you take a look at Sandy Creek, South Louis, like they're gonna know about each other.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, did we get to your Final Four? Can't even remember.
Yeah, I had the Cinderella story of OnTech.
Oh, that's right.
OnTech. All right, let's go on to the D's here.
All right, so for D's, we had a little bit of a shift in the rankings. Ryder pulled out a really good win against Poland, so they jumped Stockbridge Valley, and they are now the 3 seed. So we have Sackett's 1, Matteson 2, that has not changed, Ryder 3, and Stockbridge Valley 4. Even though this bracket is down to 12 teams, there's some matchups here that could be bad matchups for a higher ranked team, in my opinion. So for me, this was tough to get down to it, but I had to go with chalk across the board here as a Final Four of Sackett's, Matteson, Ryder, and Stockbridge Valley. My winner for this bracket is Matteson, and it is solely due to the fact that they are a 2-man team with Jacob Burns and Justin the Munyon, and they have a really good supporting cast around them. Josh, you were talking about South Jefferson earlier with their size. Matteson has Justin Munyon. He's probably 6'5", a really big boy. He can move. He's got good footwork. He can shoot it. He's got a nice, smooth little jumper. He can cause some really big problems because if you guard him tight, then you're letting Jacob Burns run wild. He's a really good playmaker. So we'll see how that goes. In terms of matchups, unfortunately for me, in my opinion, none of the ones initially in the first round kind of caught my eye. But the one that, if it does happen, that I'm looking at is Town of Webb at Stockbridge Valley. I don't really know much about Town of Webb, so I looked into their schedule, looked into their players. From what I got from their schedule, just looking at them purely on paper, is that they live and die by the 3. They're not afraid to shoot it. They're going to shoot 20 plus threes a game. And if they go in, they go in. They're probably going to win. And if they don't, then they're going to die by it. But who knows? And when it comes down to sectionals, we've seen it with March Madness and playoff games before. If someone gets hot that night, then who knows? Maybe it's their night. So even though Town of Webb has not the most impressive record, what are they at? They're at 6-11 in terms of their seeding record, 7-12 overall. This could be a matchup where if they're hot, Stockbridge Valley is going to be in for a 4-quarter matchup here. Upsets. Whether it is Stockbridge or Town of Webb in the semifinal, I think it's going to be Stockbridge. I think they're more well-rounded. They're more athletic across the board. Carter Hires are running the point. Aiden Stout making it rain from half court. You got Caden Wilson down low. and Braden Renner being the glue of the whole team there. In terms of the upset, I'm saying that Sackett's Harbor, I hate to say it, as defending champs and state runner-up, you're not making the final. That is my prediction, an upset.
All right. Josh, what you got?
I have a lot of the same as you. I have very cut and dry semifinal. It was, again, I've seen Sackett's play, and kind of like how you were talking about Town of Webb, it's kind of the same thing with Sackett. They are very much a 3-point team. They love, Marcus Castine. If he can get hot at any part of the floor, then he's hot at every part of the floor. He's a very athletic player. They played South Jeff earlier in the year, and they actually handled them pretty decently. South Jeff still came out with a win, but, I was kind of looking at South Jeff after the game, and they were beat playing that Sackett's team. So they're a very fast team, and, they were able to somewhat handle Bobby Pittick a little, so which makes me curious on how they'll be able to manage with Matteson. And I think with what I have seen from Sackett, I just think that they have the right tools. It's just whether if they can get hot from beyond the arc, because they love to shoot the three. I have them winning in the final. I think they're a very scrappy team. But as far as the game that I'm excited to watch, I actually am going to go with possibly the Copenhagen and Sackett's game. They played really early in the year, and Sackett's blew them out. It wasn't even close. Then I just watched them play last week in the Frontier League Championship. We actually streamed that one for NBC. And really the only thing that I saw that kept Copenhagen out of it was the turnovers. They were throwing the ball around a little too much, and Sackett's walked away with like 7 or 8 steals in that game. And I think if Copenhagen can make it a clean game where they're, keeping the ball under their possession and actually getting shots up per, every single drive, then I think that they can make a battle for Sackett. And I think that with it being the first round for Sackett in this playoff, I think it can be one of those times where Sackett just isn't hot yet, where it's an actual, it's a good game. But I see Sackett's coming out with it anyways. My upset here, you were mentioning that they're going to live and die by the 3, and I completely agree. And I was kind of just looking through the team's seasons throughout the whole year, just kind of seeing, anything that stuck out to me. And one thing that actually kind of stuck out to me from Ostelic Valley was their defense. A lot of their games that they won holding the team under 50 to 45 mark. In fact, most of their wins came holding a team under that 50-point mark, which is not easy to do. I'm not going to say that that's, they're going to be the team to win. But I think if there is going to be a huge upset in this tournament, it's going to be that huge upset. Obviously, you may see your 5 seeds beat a 4 seed or a 2 seed beat a 3 seed, but I think if there's going to be a big upset, it's going to be that one. And then, from that point, I just have a pretty cut-dry playoff.
For me, this one is exciting through and through. I actually have a few oddities rolling around here. I have Mater D topping Copenhagen in the first round, and then Sackett's Harbor moving on to the semifinals. I have Town of Webb. Preston Morris is the leader of that Timberwolves squad. He dropped 40 points in their last game. He's averaging 15.9. So to your point of kind of living and dying by the 3, they're either hot or they are not.
Yeah.
So we'll see how Town of Webb kind of plays out through there. Madison, I have moving on to the finals. New York Mills and Belleville is, to me, the game to watch because both of those teams, you have no idea what team is going to show up. And I think that makes for like a really exciting matchup. New York Mills has beaten some teams you're like, wow, they have no right to beat them. And then they lost to a team that you're like, they should never have lost that game. And the same exact thing can be said about Belleville. They can beat some great teams and they can lose to some terrible ones. And it's just what teams end up showing up that day makes that one an interesting watch. But I don't think either one gets past Madison in that next round. Remsen's got some pieces. I don't know what goes on in Remsen because they've got some players up there. They just can't put it together. So I have DeRuyter going on to the semifinals, but Madison beating DeRuyter. I have Stockbridge. I have them as my dark horse. Granted, I am biased, but when they sign my paychecks, I try to pay it forward here. I got Stockbridge Valley beating Sackett's. Now, one part that I do think here, though, is they gave them one heck of a game last year. They traveled to Sackett's, so they were on the road, long bus ride, and they played them all the way to the end in a pretty close matchup. Sackett's...
I think it was their toughest game throughout the entire state tournament.
Yeah.
All the way until the state final. If you look at Sackett's games last year, the closest one they had from when sectional started and when the state tournament ended, the closest one they had was against Stockbridge. And that was when it was Marcus and
Austin.
What was his last name? Griner.
Yeah, and now without Griner, I think Stockbridge Valley has a belief that they can top the Patriots. And this goes back again to that, is it a one-horse show or is it a complete unit? And that's where I give Stockbridge the edge because, yeah, Marcus is a phenomenal player.
He took over the final last year.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. He can take over any game. Can the rest of the Cougars show up to top him? I think they can. Now, could all of the Cougars kind of go blunderbuss and turn the ball over like crazy and throw it all over the place? Absolutely. 100% an option for them too. But I really want to see a rivalry matchup in the finals here of Stockbridge and Madison. I think that would be an awesome showdown. If Sackett's gets past Stockbridge, I do think the potential matchup of Sackett's and Madison is interesting as well. Sackett's has been there before, has been there 3 times in the last 3. This would be, I believe, 3 times in 3 years that they're sitting there ready to go. Madison, this is their first trip in quite some time. So do the nerves get to you in that moment versus, hey, we're kind of used to this stage. We've done this before. So that to me is where that gets interesting. Castine is averaging 23.7 points a game. But then when you take a look at Madison, it is a 2-headed monster. I mean, Jacob Burns is averaging 20.2. Lamunian is averaging 20, sorry. He has 251 rebounds on the season with 38 blocks. So they're a matchup nightmare for most teams. So if they can get it done, I think Madison's the team to beat in Class D, boys.
Yeah. All right. So with that, now we're going to transition to the girls brackets. Again, we're going to do the same exact thing. For the AAA bracket, unfortunately, this one is even smaller. Only 6 teams here. I got chalk across the board. We actually found out this morning that the BTM ranking is more than just 3 numbers. It's like a whole bunch of them. So hence why Liverpool is the 1 and CNS was the 2, because on high school sports stats they were tied. I got a Liverpool CNS final, and I have CNS winning both boys and the girls sectionals this year. CNS and Liverpool split between the 2. Besides that, I got nothing else for this bracket.
Yeah, I have pretty much the exact same thing. I think that potential championship of Liverpool versus CNS is going to be a great game. Really excited for it, but I think that CNS is going to be the team to pull it out. I think it'll be very exciting for CNS to have that possible championships, but I think it'll be a very fun championship if that's the case.
Yeah, I went all chalk here. Liverpool CNS championship game. They've split the season. Great matchup. Super excited. I think everyone's excited to see that one. I gave it to Liverpool off of nothing more than I like their Spartan logo better.
All right, moving on to AA. I feel like for AA here, it was kind of similar to the boys bracket where it's like you could see one matchup going a different way. For me, I have chalk across the board. I got West Jenny, Nottingham, Henniger, and Central Squares, the final four. I have Nottingham winning and beating West Jenny in the finals. Initial matchup is Central Square versus ESM. I feel like that could be a pretty close game. In terms of potential matchups, Nottingham and Henniger, that could be a really, really good one if both teams advance to the semifinal. And the upset that I could see happening is my final, if it adds up, which is Nottingham over West Jenny.
Yeah. I had the ESM taking over Central Square. I like the way that they play. I think it's a good all-around look. I think that they're going to be able to take down Central Square. I don't see them being able to take down West Genesee. I have them going into the final. I do have it being Henniger versus Nottingham. I do have Nottingham making it to the final. And then really between Nottingham and West Genesee, it was really kind of a toss-up. But just kind of looking at the two teams and their schedule and just kind of who they're playing. I think it was going to go to Nottingham. You know, they're just my pick for that. And then, yeah, my upset obviously being the ESM over Central Square.
Okay. I went a very different way from you guys. I do go mostly chalk. I've got West Genesee, Central Square, Nottingham. I have Oswego also making the Final Four with an upset of Henniger. And this is where the BTM is an interesting beast. Because teams are different at this time of year. West Jenny is, below 500? They are a 7-11 team, and they are a 1 seed. Central Square is 15-5. I believe they are defending champions. And I have them winning it all. I have them beating West Jenny, playing Nottingham, beating Nottingham. They have beat Nottingham. And this is where the BTM is very strange because not too long ago, Central Square's been on a tear. They beat Nottingham not very long ago. Nottingham's the 2 seed. Central Square is kind of getting punished here because they dropped 2 games to Fulton really early on. And that has kind of hurt their seeding significantly. But I think they have gotten things going in the right direction. I have Central Square pulling off the upset as the 4 seed, an underseeded 4 seed all the way.
For both boys and girls for the AA, you could potentially, if it does go chalk, you could potentially see West Jenny boys and girls against Nottingham boys and girls for the finals. Just wanted to point that out.
That gym will be crazy. Both the boys and girls are in our SRC arena this year. There's no small gym fiasco.
Oh, okay. Nice.
All right. Let's move on to the A's.
Yep. So for me, I believe that this is a one-team show here. Utica Notre Dame being the 1 seed. I have Utica Notre Dame, JD, New Hartford, and Indian River sneaking in there as the Final Four. I have Utica Notre Dame running away with this tournament. They could win the whole entire state tournament. Matchup to look at is VVS versus South Jeff. I think that could be an interesting one. A potential matchup that I am looking at that could be a good game is CBA and Indian River going into the next round. And then the upset that I am looking at right now could be CBA over New Hartford if both teams make it to the next round.
Yeah. I kind of had the same thing with Utica Notre Dame. I had them pretty much running away with it. Indian River is a very interesting team. They really, I was at their Frontier League Championship game, and they were struggling to shoot the ball. Like, they were just kind of missing their shots. They're they're a good overall squad, but if they struggle with fouls or if they're just missing their shots, then there really isn't much that they're going to be able to do against really any team. So I think that they are going to be able to sneak their way into that semifinal. I think DBA is going to give them a good fight, but I think, again, if Indian River just shows up and if they have the right game going in, they're a very good team. So I'm going to say that they do make it to the semifinal. I do see Utica Notre Dame squeaking them out. I do have them play JD. Your other semifinal, I am going to also have New Hartford. Obviously, being from South Jeff, the game I'm excited to watch is going to be VBS versus South Jeff. You know, they played one time earlier this year, and it was a very tight matchup. I expect nothing less from this one. I'd be excited to see if South Jeff wins. But, I think as far as an upset goes, I think that would have to be it, is the South Jeff over VBS. Yeah. Just because those two teams are very well matched up.
Yeah, this tournament isn't super exciting to me in that regard. I feel like it is a lot of chalk. I think the Oneida West Hill game will be very interesting, and VVS South Jefferson is going to be good. VVS, really excited to see that turnaround. They were one of the bottom programs last year, so quite a turnaround for them in one season. But this is going to be the Utica Notre Dame show. That's what it's going to be. Indian River, I have meeting up with UND in the semifinals. JD versus New Hartford, I have in the semifinals with Utica Notre Dame winning it all. Ella Trinkhouse is just an absolute monster. 480 points this season. She's averaging 25.3. This is how people scored 1,000-point career in 2 years, It's that kind of performance. She's that kind of player. She has 310 rebounds, 86 assists, 65 steals, 82 blocks.
Damn.
Utica Notre Dame. You guys have fun going to the state tournament. That's what I'm doing on this one. All right. Class B.
Class B, this is where I got a little bit of a upset here. The Final Four, I have Bishop Grimes, Marcellus, and Phoenix. And then Oriskany is the fourth. Winner, I have Bishop Grimes over Marcellus. The matchup I am looking forward to is Clinton and Herkimer. They split both games. Both games were pretty close. So again, that could be one of your 8 and 9 seed games where I always think about March Madness and you're trying to fill out your brackets and you're just like, all right, just flip a coin at this point. In terms of potential matchups that I think could possibly happen is Oriskany versus Little Falls. I think that could be a really good game. Who knows? I could definitely see Little Falls getting into the semifinals as well. And then the upset I have is Phoenix over General.
Nice.
Yeah. I've been able to watch this General Brown team, and in fact, one of the players on General Brown, actually 3 of them, have recently committed to the college that I currently go to. So I've been able to watch some of these players very closely on General Brown. It is very difficult for me to, stay away from General Brown, but I do like their team. They like to share the ball. They have a good 6-man. Tryon, she's very good at playing the 6-man role. I have General Brown punching their way into the semifinal against Marcellus. I do think that's where the road ends, but I do think that they are definitely going to be happy with that semifinals appearance. and I think it's going to be a good way for some of those girls to move on to JCC. As far as the other side, Bishop Grimes, I have that one being pretty set in stone there. I have them going in. And I like the battle of Oriskany and Little Falls. I liked watching Lowville this year, but I think we're going to see a pretty cut and dry semifinal as far as this one goes. I got Bishop Grimes winning it all. It is tough for me to go against General Brown for how much I've seen from them, how much good basketball I've seen from them, but I also know how good of a team Marcellus is. So I'm gonna have it's a very cut and dry playoff.
Yeah.
I don't really have too much.
I run sort of the same way. I've got Bishop Grimes. I do have Little Falls in the semis against Grimes, but I have Grimes beating Little Falls in that next round. And I have Marcellus and General Brown, with Marcellus winning and Marcellus winning it all. I've got them running away with it. I think the interesting matchup is Oriskany Little Falls. Oriskany has a great season. Oriskany merged with Westmoreland, so it's both. It is a combined team. Sorry, Westmoreland, for always leaving you out. Your name's too long to put on a lot of my graphics. So it is both of them, and I say that mostly to not underrate those Westmo players that are playing with them, because they are phenomenal. That Oriskany team is a great. They are 3 kids that are very talented. Addison Fabio is that one Oriskany player, and then you have Jackie Downs and Maddie Enos, who are studs, absolutely, and they play relentless. It is very fast, tough pace, and they can rain threes on you. They do sort of live and die by that at times, I think, and that's where I give Little Falls the benefit of the doubt, because they've been here before. They're not dealing with, being a merged school, a new team, and not having been in these situations before. Oriskany's strength of schedule is not great. A lot of the teams that they took on this year were a little bit weaker. They did stretch themselves in a few places, and their league is strong, hence the 4 seed. But that's why I give Little Falls the edge there.
All right. Should be a good one. It is also, again, another matchup where Marcellus, if they make it all the way, them and the boys could be at the finals. So another little.
And if we do get that 1-2 final of Grimes and Marcellus, I think that'll be a great game.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to Class C here, we got
this
a
one
full.
I think is the most exciting.
Yeah, I agree. You got 1, 2, 3 playing games. For me, I had scratch across the board, or chalk across the board. I had Hamilton, Cooperstown, West Canada Valley, and Weedsport in Final Four. My winner, out of all of the winners to pick, out of all of my brackets, this one was the toughest for me. I went with Hamilton, just because of the fact of that they have been here before. Their whole entire program has been consistent for the last, 2, 3, 4 years, right, Jay?
Yeah.
So they're not going to shy away from the big moments. So that's what gave them the upper edge for me. I have them beating Cooperstown. One potential matchup that I'm looking at is Hamilton versus Weedsport, if it does get to that point in the semifinals. I mean, at this point, the 1, 2, 3, and 4s are so competitive and so close. Would I be shocked if Weedsport wins against Hamilton? No. But I'm going to predict that I don't know. It could potentially happen. One thing that really caught my eye is Cooperstown. They have a player. Her name is Emma Johnson. She led the team in scoring. Led the team in scoring. 13 points per game. She is a 7th grader. That is unbelievable. I had no idea about this, and when I saw that completely blew my mind. Just leading the team, and
she's shooting over 50% from 3.
I mean, that's just ridiculous. I don't care what level, boys, girls, that is just unbelievable. unbelievable. They have a 14-2 seeding record, a 16-4 overall record. They're averaging 54.8 points a game. Their differential is 21. I was very, very impressed once I kind of dug deeper into Cooperstown. So if that Hamilton versus Cooperstown matchup does happen, that's going to be an amazing one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Josh, what you got?
There's a lot of these games that I think can be some very interesting games. I have Hamilton making it in. I have Cooperstown making it in. I have that being my final. Kind of from that point, again, it's very much of a toss-up. I'm gonna stick with the cut and dry, or the good, like, chalk look for the semifinal. But the reason that I'm gonna go with that is I think there's some. I mean, when we look at the final score of some of these games, some of the tough part is seeing the final couple of minutes where it's just foul time, and all of a sudden a 4-point game turns into an 8-point game, turning into a 10-point game because you're just trying to save time by fouling. And that's why I think this game, the game between Lafayette and Tully, I think is going to be an interesting one. I'm not going to say specifically that I think it's going to end with Lafayette in the win, but Tully has won both of their matchups this year by 7 exactly. And I think that with that garbage time, that could be around a 3 to 4 point win, which makes it to have that in 2 straight games makes these two teams are very close in, competitiveness. So I'm gonna say that's what happens. I don't know really what's gonna go through, but I think Lafayette is gonna manage to upset Tully, and then that kind of gives Weedsport that 12-4 matchup, giving them a little bit of an easier route to the semifinal, and then Hamilton kind of takes it from there. But yeah, outside of that, that's why I think that game is going to be my most exciting game to look at, is the Lafayette versus Tully, because they've had 2 games this year. Both have ended in a very close fashion, and I think with the foul time that you add into it, it makes it an even closer game.
Yeah, right next to each other. Nice little rivalry, backyard rivalry between the two of them as well. This one I'm excited for, not because I'm excited for upsets, because I don't see any upsets really happening here. I think this is one of the most chalk brackets that you can make. However, that Final Four to me is absolutely insane. Weedsport and Tully as a potential matchup can be very interesting, but I do give that edge to Weedsport. And that's where Weedsport, Hamilton, that's a really exciting matchup to me, because both teams are really well balanced. Weedsport is led by Kayla Flask, who's got 16.6 points per game. Keegan McNabb has 14.4 points per game, and Mallory Brown has 11.2. So you got a 3-headed monster in Weedsport that you have to contend with. But Hamilton's been here and has proven themselves. So they're a little more well-balanced too. You got Logan Langle, absolute stud, 15.5 points per game, and is just distributing the ball. They play very unselfishly, and a lot of that permeates. They've had a lot of blowouts, and a lot of, I think their points per game would probably be higher if they didn't pass it around to some of these other kids so much later in the game. You've got Reagan Hope averaging 10 points a game. And then you have Chloe LaFrance, Marie Dye, who are those other factors. And Cameron Cleveland inside can be a bit of a problem for people to handle with Hamilton. So I think it'll be a really good game to see how they do it. Hamilton has been there before. And then the other side is also a super cool matchup, because you have Cooperstown, who not only features Emma Johnson, a 7th grader, but they have Lainey Nellen, who I believe is sisters to Miles Nellen on the boys team. She's averaging 8 points a game. She's in 8th grade. And they have Mia Kaltenbach, who's got 8.8 per game, and Brenna Seaman has 9.1. So they are also really well-rounded. But that well-rounded comes with some age and inexperience. When you take a look at West Canada Valley, they've been here before. They're missing Hannah Burdick. The few kids graduated last year, but I could totally see, and that's actually my prediction, is West Canada Valley Hamilton get a part 2 of this Class C girls final is West Canada Valley and Hamilton. West Canada Valley not so well balanced this year, but Brooke Reddington and Annalise Grabowski are absolute monsters to deal with. And I think in the moment, in front of a big crowd, I think they'll step up when the lights are shining bright. And so I see West Canada getting to the finals, but then I give it to Logan Langle and Hamilton to repeat as champions for Class C. But some really exciting matchups. I mean, Brooke Reddington's averaging 18.4 a game. Grabowski's averaging 15.6. They're both big, but play like guards, and so they're super. You can move them around the court and get matchups that really favor you across the board. But yeah, that semifinal I think is going to be great. Those games are going to be awesome games.
At that point in time, if it does finish chalk there to the Final Four, it's you could see either combination happening, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think any four have a chance. All right, let's go to one of the smallest brackets on the board, the Class D girls.
This was shrunken because of Belleville not opting in to play. Lyme is staying put. They are going to the tournament.
1 and 18 team is going into the tournament as the 5 seed. That's
yep.
Wild.
And they're playing Copenhagen, who I believe had 6 wins. So I think Copenhagen took both matchups there. Just in general here, I think this is pretty similar going back to, which one was it? I think it was, Class A with Utica Notre Dame. I think it's kind of the same thing here with Lafargeville. They are the clear dominant force here for Class D basketball for the girls. Wouldn't be shocked if they make a little run in the state tournament. So Final Four, I have Lafargeville, Watertown, IHC, and I have McGraw beating Sackus Harbor. And then I have Copenhagen beating Lyme. Winner, I have Lafargeville. The upset is the matchup I just stated, McGraw over Sackus. McGraw's got speed, they have athleticism, they shoot, they're not afraid to shoot, they are aggressive, both offensively and defensively. They are very, very high energy type of team. If they are moving and grooving and dishing and swishing, they are going to be very, very tough for Sackus to handle, in my opinion. The matchup I'm looking at is Stockbridge Valley at Watertown IHC. Again, a little bit of bias there, but I mean, there's a lack of matchups here, so I had to pick one. But from what I've seen on paper, Watertown IHC kind of seems like a little bit of a one-player team. I know that their schedule is very, very impressive. They're a 10-win team. They're playing a lot of bigger schools. I personally don't believe that they should be a Class D team. I believe that they should be at least a C, just because of the fact that they are playing intentionally bigger schools. But in terms of this matchup, if Stockbridge Valley can somewhat slow down Abigail Bombard, then it could be a pretty good matchup. For Stockbridge, you got 3 good tools. You got Carolyn Carmen, you got Marley Brummer, who can drive to the hoop and finish, and then you also got Madison Hartle. So I think that could be a really, really good matchup.
Yeah. I mean, looking at the 1 and 2 of this bracket with Lafargeville and IHC, it feels like the Frontier League took the top 2 teams that they could find and put them in opposite conferences so that they never play each other, just so that we could save it for this championship. I mean, IHC playing up against the AA's, A's, and B's of the Frontier League giving them kind of, like we mentioned before, kind of that BLM kind of help a little bit in a push through. But to go with IHC, they are a very solid team. I do also agree that I think if the Stockbridge Valley can hold down Abigail Lombard, then it can be a very interesting game. I think I'm still going to go with IHC just because, you know, they're the 2 seed for a reason. They are a good team. I think, like you mentioned, I think if there is going to be a big upset in this one, I think that McGraw game is going to be it. Somewhat struggled there towards the end of the season. I mean, they've had their moments where they were winning, you know, a bunch of games. You know, it was pretty cut and dry that we were going to have Lafargeville versus Sackets for the Frontier League title. And in the semifinal, Sackets falls to Copenhagen. And it was kind of a bit of a shocker for everybody. And then Copenhagen went out and, you know, I'm not going to say they really battled with Lafargeville because, I mean, let's be honest, Lafargeville, they beat them by, I think, 20. But at the end of the day, Copenhagen put up much of a better fight than what, you know, a lot of people would have thought. So I have a very chalk board here. I have Copenhagen beating Lime. I have Copenhagen playing Lafargeville, and, you know, kind of the same thing as the Frontier League title. I'm not going to say that it's going to be a close game where you're on the edge of your seat, but, you know, it's going to be one that you're going to, you know, you're going to be shocked by how Copenhagen plays. I think IHC is going to take down either Sackets or McGraw. I am going to say that Sackets wins, but if there is going to be an upset, it will be that game. And then I think it will be Lafargeville sending it straight into states, running like they never stop.
This is an interesting bracket, and I'm really, 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 really biased. So I went all in on my bias train. And Lafargeville, to me, is the clear front runner. I believe when they won it last year and got to the regionals and got to, like, we're going into the state tournament, essentially, I think their eyes were opened into what they want. They were seeking out everybody and anybody to play, and they're traveling all over the place to do it because they have their eyes on state. And I don't see anybody getting in their way. I think they're going to walk through this tournament, and then their goals are to get a state title. And good luck to the Red Knights in that conquest for that state title. Emmeline Barton, a stud, 25.2 points per game. 109 steals on the season. She leads that crew, but it is still a well-balanced crew. Her sister Margie has 200 points this season. She's got 11.1 per game to kind of balance out that. And they have 2 bigs inside, Eliza Smith and Chloe Gafford, that really make your matchups pretty tough for other teams as well, defensively especially, and they can run the floor. Copenhagen, I don't think, has a problem with Lime. And they've actually been playing really well lately. They've kind of gotten themselves back on the good foot, on a solid footing, led by Haley. Oh, geez, I'm going to screw this up now. Haley Miller and Molly Babcock. I think they're doing pretty well getting themselves set, but I don't see them taking out Lafargeville. Sackets Harbor McGraw. Sackets Harbor has really changed their season around. The return of Peyton Britton has really done that for them, and I think that gave them the depth that they needed. Peyton's averaging 14.5 a game, so not having that in the early stages was definitely hurting them early on. You have Lily Green, who's got some size in there as well, and then Paige Britton. I think they're pretty well balanced, and I think that's where McGraw wants to get out and run. They don't shoot outside shots. They're not challenging you from range too often. They can shoot. Leah Terwilliger leading that team with 11.1 points per game. They can. They just tend not to. According to here, they have 12 three-pointers on the entire season. So it's just not a part of their game. And to come up with the upset I think you need to have that as part of your repertoire in order to get that upset. They have the first part. I think they want to force them to run, but I think almost every team in the Frontier League wants to make you run, so I don't think that's going to affect Sackets. I have Sackets beating McGraw. Watertown, IHC, and Stockbridge is the interesting matchup to me. Also because I coach Stockbridge, so that helps. It is the difference between IHC being that kind of one-horse pony show with Abby Bombard, who is an absolute stud. I mean, playing against Class A schools and still putting up 24.3 points per game is absolutely insane. So can Stockbridge stop them? God, I hope so. But I don't know if that's possible. But Stockbridge is the interesting matchup to me because they've got some size. And so Marley Brummer and Carolyn Carmer on the inside, can they slow that pace down? Can they get the ball inside and work that to their advantage? Can they put Bombard into foul trouble? There are ways that IHC can lose that. And so to me, that's the upset. My bracket is horribly biased, and I'm going to just dive into it. So I have Sackets versus Lafargeville and Stockbridge Valley in the finals, but I do give it to Lafargeville. I had to stop my bias within reason.
On top of that, too, to further support your point of Marley Brummer and Carolyn Kerman, not only do they have size, but they're really good athletes, too. They're both, or Marley's a 3-sport athlete. I think Carolyn is as well. I believe, right, Jay? Yep. So both 3-sport athletes, really good. Carolyn is only in 8th grade, so she's only going to get better and better. Marley, this is her last gig. She's a senior. A little bit of desperation, a little bit of leadership, and just full send into this sectional tournament, this matchup. So I think, like you said, it definitely could be an interesting one. We are partially biased, Jay and I, but.
I'm not partially. I'm very.
But yeah, at the end of the day, it's Lafargeville and everyone else, in my opinion. Who knows how far they go in the state tournament? But I have a feeling they're going to go pretty far.
Yeah, and I hope they do. Good luck to them. They've been a nice source of competition. I've enjoyed watching them play. I like the brand of basketball that they have going. So good luck to them. And good luck to all the teams. Holy cow. This is crazy. It's sectional time. Time. So good luck to everybody out there. Let us know where we are ridiculously wrong in the comments, and we will never look at our predictions again so that we can feel like we were right and our experts. No, maybe we'll go back and look at how we were horribly, horribly wrong. Thanks for joining us on our special edition here of the CNY Sports Authority. Small schools, big coverage, CNY Sports Authority. Thank you, guys.
The whole world was a playground until the sun went down. We had it all when we didn't have all that much. I ain't making that